Welcome to Battle of the Boroughs with your host here, Alex Wilson and Spen Harris. Diving into some New York Knicks and Brooklyn Nets news this week. Of course, Nets winning their last two games. Really exciting for them after kind of an interesting start. James Harden finally picking up the slack and really doing some good things. Spen was telling me before the podcast, the guy got to the line 19 times. And that's absolutely ridiculous. I don't think I've seen that in quite a while. Looks like he's finally getting the calls again. And the Knicks, having some interesting issues as well, whether it be playing down to their opponents, lack of hustle, just a little inconsistencies, but I think they're going to get better. They're going to gel. So we want to take a look at the past two games for both teams, who's standing out, weaknesses and strengths and whatnot. But before we do so, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm okay, man. Coming off an intramural championship loss last night. Had to win the first playoff game to get to the ship. Won that. Had 5 minutes of rest. My 28-year-old out-of-shape body is not capable of playing two basketball games in a row. And that was clearly evident in the championship game, in which after the first 5 minutes, I couldn't move my legs. So today I'm a little bit sore, not going to lie to you, but I'm excited to come on here and talk Knicks, Nets basketball with you. Already made another appearance on the Talking Nets podcast earlier today. And just a lot going on with New York basketball right now. It's an exciting time for both franchises. And I'm just happy to get into it. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. I mean, well, aside from the Giants absolutely blowing.
I wasn't going to bring that up.
Yeah, I mean, at first I was like, I feel pretty mentally, I'm actually in hell. The Giants just continuously, that's why I'm more trying to focus on basketball right now. And if you're a football fan, stick to your fantasy and your sports betting and stuff, because the Jets, I mean, Mike White looked like a freaking franchise quarterback last week. And then you have the Giants shooting themselves in the foot against the Kansas City Chiefs in prime time. Kansas City tried to give him this game, but of course, couldn't figure that one out because the Giants absolutely suck. But Knicks and Nets doing a lot better. I think these are two teams that we can be excited about. And if you're just a New York fan, you're not a fan of either team, you can kind of watch both of these squads and say, these are two exciting teams that we can watch and expect them to be postseason contenders, right?
Absolutely. And the final thing I'll say about, the Giants and everything is my headset's working today. So I can hear you loud and clearly. I'm ready to talk Nets, but, I know Joe Judge had some issues with his headset, and I'm just happy that we at, Fireside Nets, Fireside Knicks, Empire Sports Media, were able to have headsets that work. It's a nice luxury.
Yeah, right. I know. I was just saying, I was trying to make a joke on Twitter last night. I was like, I really hope that Joe Judge is running just a ridiculously long lap, runs by my apartment in Manhattan just so I can stop him, call a random timeout, and then blame it on the headsets. And today, in the NFL came out today, the best part is the NFL comes out and says, we don't know what you're talking about, bro.
Yep.
Classic Giants, just absolute meltdown happening in front of us again.
Yeah. All right. I'm ready to talk about two teams in New York that, fans can be excited about. We'll start with our Brooklyn Nets. Played the Pacers on Friday, beat the Pacers 105-98. They were coming off a tough loss against Miami a few days prior, so it was good to get back in the win column. This was a huge game for Lamarcus Aldridge, 21 points for him on 10 of 16 from the field. He joins the 20,000-point scorers club, which is crazy. You don't think of Lamarcus Aldridge as like an all-time great scorer, but he's been in this league for a long time, and he's always had statistically really solid seasons. I don't know how many all-star games he's been in. I'm not sure of that stat, but you don't think, when you think of the great big men in the last 20 years, the great scoring big men, for some reason, Lamarcus Aldridge's name doesn't pop into my head, but lo and behold, 21 points in this one. He joins the 20,000-point scoring club. I mean, I'll start with this. What do you think of LA achieving that accomplishment?
I mean, look, LA has like incredible players, right? You're looking at LeBron talking about.
LA is Lamarcus Aldridge's nickname.
Oh God, I'm like LA.
I've learned that he doesn't like LMA. His players call him LA. The coach calls him LA. So Nets fans, I had to get used to calling him LA. I'm sorry. I should have just said Lamarcus.
As a Knicks fan, I would not know that. But
okay,
I'll say, you know what? I guess I got to call him LA now. LA making this type of comeback and kind of playing as well as he is pretty respectful. Like, as a Knicks fan, I respect the hell out of him for making this comeback. And I'm looking at the box score against the Pacers right now, and what do you have? 21 points, right?
Yep, 21 on 10 of 16 from the field.
I mean, that's pretty. What else can you ask from him at this point, right? He's on the bench. He's coming off the bench. He's playing 28 minutes. I mean, that's a pretty damn impressive stat line. What else can you ask? 8 rebounds in addition to that. He looks like he's having a pretty solid year for himself. I mean, his stats so far, he's averaging 12.7 points per game, 1.2 blocks, showing a little bit of defense there, 5 rebounds. He's not a 3-point shooter by any means, but he's shooting 68% from the field. Pretty impressed, man. I think that he's a good player, a good veteran player for you guys at 36 years old. The only thing I will say is that I think there has to be a bit of load management that has to be incorporated at some point in the season. You don't want to overwhelm him.
No, you're 100% right. He got a day of rest. I think if it wasn't against Miami, it was the game before that, but he's going to get his days off. You mentioned the 1.2 blocks per game for Lamarcus. Nick Claxton has not played a ton for the Nets this year. He has this illness. It's not COVID-19. He's out multiple games. It's a little fishy what's going on with Nick Claxton, but our front court has needed to step up. And unfortunately, Blake Griffin has had a rough go of it. Not a great start to the season for him. Paul Millsap doesn't get a ton of time for some reason. So Lamarcus Aldridge by default has been that big guy that the Nets need to rely on. And he's been great. On the defensive side, too, he's really kind of proved that even at 36, he can still defend the paint. He's had a few blocks, and he's made life tough for a few of the big men on the Pacers and the Pistons. So, congrats to LA. Great accomplishment joining that club. But you brought up the 19 free throws for James Harden, 16 of 19 from the line, 5 of 11 from the field, 3 of 6 from 3, 29 points. This came right after Harden, in a loss to Miami, said to the media, I want to score 30 or 40 points a game. I'm just not there yet. I don't know when I'll be there. He's pretty damn close in this one. Really good game for Harden, 29 points. And the only other guy who was over 10 points was Kevin Durant, 22 points for him, 7 of 10 from the field, 1 of 3 from 3-point range, and then 7 of 8 from the free throw line, 11 rebounds and 7 assists. The numbers that need to go down are the turnovers, 7 turnovers for Kevin Durant. He was a little bit careless in this one. There was the moment in the game where he was fouled by Chris Duarte, and he just chucked the ball into the stands. I don't know if you saw that highlight. He was not ejected. After the game, the refs reviewed it and said he should have been ejected for that situation. He just chucked the ball like literally 20 rows into the stands. So, he's been great for the Nets early on. I'll get to the Pistons in a little bit, but 2 momentary lapses in judgment for him. He got ejected in the Pistons game, almost got ejected in this Pacers game. It is what it is, but 22 points for him. You'll have to see that. Outside of those 3 guys, no one really played great. Millsap had 8 off the bench. Joe Harris had 9. Bruce Brown had 8. This is a Pacers team that was playing without Karis LeVert, without Malcolm Brogdon. I got to give Chris Duarte credit. 19 points for the rookie, 9 of 19 from the field. He can play. He is a bona fide scoring point guard. He is going to be very solid in this league for years to come. I believe he had some family in attendance at the game. So he after the game, I saw him on the court with his family members. Great moment for him. And then Torrey Craig. The Nets have this, recurring theme where they allow these average NBA players to just go off and they make them look like all-stars. Torrey Craig had 28 points off the bench for the Pacers, 9 of 16 from the field, 4 of 7 from 3, 6 of 8 from the line, 11 rebounds for Torrey Craig. No idea how he did that, because this is a guy, without looking, he's probably averaging 10 to 12 points a game without looking at his statistics. But it was just, look, the Pacers got off to a really good start. He's averaging 6.3 points per game, by the way, Torrey Craig. The Pacers got off to a really good start, 38 points in the first quarter for them. They were really beaten up on the Nets. And then the Nets kind of got together and they said, look, we should be killing this team. They outscored the Pacers 32-17 in the second, 27-19 in the third. And then the game was essentially over in the fourth. So solid win for the Nets. This is a game that you need to win because you're 3-3 before this. You were 2-3 before this game. You needed to get back to 500. Just an overall solid win for Brooklyn.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at the stats now, and one thing that I have kind of a question for you is really how are they supplementing not having a traditional point guard? Because I know they kind of have Harden pick up the slack. He had 12 assists last game, showcasing that he's really acting as the facilitator at times. I know Kevin Durant had 5 assists as well. They can both take the ball up the floor. But do you think that not having a traditional point guard is going to bite them in the butt at some point this season? Do you think that If one of those guys goes down, which is entirely possible if they continue to lean on them extremely heavily, a lot of teams can find ways around it and not really have a traditional point guard like that. But I think that without Kyrie, teams may figure out like how to stop them, if that makes sense. Like they may figure out if we can stop the assists coming from Harden and Durant, if we can intercept the passing lanes, if we can just lock them down or play press, like we can kind of stop the facilitation. You know what I mean? Because like Kyrie's too quick. You can't play him like that. But Harden's not as quick as him. Like Durant's not as quick. Obviously elite scorers nonetheless, but I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that kind of idea.
Yeah, that's a great question. Luckily, so you're right. The Nets don't have a traditional point guard. I mean, James Harden is the point guard. Patty Mills, Javon Carter come off the bench. Javon Carter has had a really bad start to this season. He actually played well against the Pistons the other night. Patty Mills is more of a scoring combo guard. He's not as much of your traditional point guard as, say, a TJ McConnell or for you guys, Kemba, Derrick Rose. The one thing I will say is that the Nets have guys who are very high in basketball IQ. And I'll give you an example. Bruce Brown is not a pure point guard, but he knows what to do with the ball. He knows what to do off ball. He's someone who makes good decisions. Blake Griffin is another guy. Blake Griffin is not as good as he used to be. We all know that. He's lost a little bit as the years have went on, and he's more of a stretch five now. He's someone who actually has a really high basketball IQ, so he knows what he's doing as well. You go down the list, Millsap, high basketball IQ. Lamarcus Aldridge, same. Mills. Deandre Bembry, who I'm going to get to in the Pistons game. He's got a pretty good basketball IQ too. So I think what Sean Marks has done here without Kyrie Irving, without a traditional point guard, obviously Harden's your point guard, but without that TJ McConnell-esque guy, you just have a lot of guys who have a high basketball IQ. And now the key for the Nets is just getting those guys to play together and developing that chemistry. And I think in this game, you started to see that. Yeah, Lamarcus Aldridge got hot. James Harden went to the line 19 times, but you really saw it on display in the Pistons game. And this is a great segue to the Pistons game. So the Nets beat the Pistons on Sunday night, 117-91. This is a Pistons team that's 1-5, 0-4 on the road. We're playing without Cade Cunningham, the number one pick in the draft. Jeremy Grant is on this team. He had 11 points, and Corey Joseph off the bench had 13. But this was, for me, the biggest team win for the Brooklyn Nets. They set a franchise record, Alex, 65.3% from the field. If you look at this box score, everybody, with the exception of Bruce Brown and Patty Mills and Cam Thomas, who got up one shot in garbage time, everybody else who played shot over 50% from the field or better. I mean, Kevin Durant, 10 of 13, James Harden, 6 of 9, Lamarcus Aldridge, 7 of 8, Deandre Bembry, 6 of 8 from the field. The list goes on and on and on. But what I was saying about the basketball IQ, you're starting to see that, and you saw it on display in this game. There were a lot of great moments. James Harden would get a rebound on defense, chuck it up the court. He did it twice for 2 fast break layups to Kevin Durant. There was a great moment where DeAndre Bembry was baseline. James Harden had the ball. He came up through an alley-oop to Bembry for the slam. And, you know, everyone got it going in this game. Blake Griffin and Javon Carter, who have really struggled to start this season. Blake Griffin was 3 of 4 from the field, 8 points for him, 5 rebounds against his former team. Javon Carter, who is someone the Nets traded for. We traded away Landry Shamet because we did not want to pay Landry Shamet. Initially, Landry Shamet was traded away for the draft rights to Sadiq Bey. So we could have had Sadiq Bey, who's on this Pistons team. He could have been a Brooklyn Net, but it all turned into Javon Carter. And Javon Carter, for those who don't know, is the Nets' backup point guard right now. He's a bulldog. He's supposed to be a defensive-minded player who can hit the three-point shot. He has not hit the three-point shot at all at the start of this season. 2 of 4 from him from three-point range, 3 of 5 from the field for 8 points. It was good to see Carter get going. I mentioned DeAndre Bembry, 15 points for him, 7 rebounds, 2 steals, 1 assist. He is someone who the Nets have not really played until these last few games. Nash has started to give him a little bit more time off the bench, and he is an energy guy off this bench. He's a bigger player. I think he's listed at, I want to say 6'7", 6'8", DeAndre Bembry. He is someone who can give the Nets that energy that Bruce Brown gives them in the starting lineup. That's what Bembry can give them off the bench. He hit 1-3 in this game. It was nice to see him go, and he's 6'5", by the way. So DeAndre Bembry, 6'5". But yeah, just an overall great game for the Nets. Your high scorer was Kevin Durant with 23 points. It looked like it was going to be a 40-point game for Kevin Durant. Then he got ejected in the third quarter. He ran through a screen and basically extended his arm after the whistle, shoved Kelly Olynyk to the ground. In Kevin Durant's defense, I feel like every player in the league wants to shove Olynyk to the ground. He's an irritant. He's a gnat. I don't think opponents like him. So I think it was well worth it. And then Durant joked after the game. My ejection sparked a run because I think the Nets went on an 11-0 run after that. Some other notes in this game, Alex. James Harden, 18 points, 12 assists, 10 rebounds. His first triple-double of the season. Still 5 turnovers for James Harden. You want to see that number come down, but you liked what he gave you. Joe Harris, 12 points on 5 of 9 from the field, 2 of 4 from 3. He's got to get it going. And something I talked about on my podcast, Fireside Nets, because the Nets don't have Kyrie Irving, it's going to be third star by committee. And, we've seen throughout the first 7 games, it's been Lamarcus Aldridge on some nights. It's been Patty Mills on some nights. It has not been Joe Harris once. He has to start becoming that guy on occasion. So it was nice to see him, with decent shooting numbers, shooting over 50%, but 4 3-pointers is not enough. He's got to get 7 to 8 a game. So that was great to see. And then in regards to Lamarcus Aldridge, by the way, another strong performance, 16 points, 7 of 8 from the field. Right now, as it stands, he's playing his way into that 6-man of the league, sort of that award early on. Obviously, we have a long season, and like you said, he's going to be load management, Lamarcus Aldridge. But right now, he's one of the best 6 men in the league, just coming off the bench and giving them. Now, I think he's actually eventually going to start because I'm not sure Blake Griffin's going to be able to pick it up, but that's a different story for another day. The one thing I'll say, in addition to the great offense that the Nets displayed, their defense was really superb in this game. They made life hell for Detroit. They limited Detroit to under 26 points in every single quarter and then 17 points in the fourth. Nobody on Detroit scored more than 13 points. I mentioned Corey Joseph was the high man with 13. Jeremy Grant had 11 and Josh Jackson had 12. Nobody else had over 10 points. So just a really good defensive effort for the Nets. But like I said, these are games that they need to win. The Pacers, the Pistons, bottom of the league. You got to take care of business here. And while the Nets were great in both these games, I want to see them do it against the Milwaukees, against the Philadelphias, against the New Yorks. You guys are in the upper echelon in the East right now. So I want to see us take on a team that, can compete with us. And it was great to win these games, but I'm taking it with a grain of salt.
So I've been looking, while you were speaking about all these different factors.
Yeah.
I was looking at some team stats. And I have a pretty, maybe not a bold take, but if the Nets continue at the pace they are right now, they're not going to be a great team. They're not going to be a great team because I'll tell you right now, they do not rank well in most scoring categories. They rank, right now, they're ranked 12th in 3-point percentage, but they also rank, I think, what is it?
22nd.
22nd.
Yep.
No, 22nd 3-point attempts.
Okay.
Right. So that's really bad. The league is a 3-point shooting league now. Like everybody knows that.
Okay. Yeah.
And the Knicks made it a focal point to increase that. Now, I will say this, their defense has been way above expectations. They've been much better in that area. Currently in points per game, they rank 20th at 104.6. That's not sustainable. One category they're very, very good in, though, which is quite strange, is rebounds. Defensive rebounds specifically, which attests to their more defensive approach this year and lack of production on offense. They're 4th in defensive rebounds. Offensive rebounds, however, I think they are 30th. So not doing much there. There's a couple of things, like if we look at field goal percentage, they're 9th. But overall, they're not really doing a lot in terms of offensive production and turnovers. They're 15th, so they're in the middle of the crowd. But they need to step it up. If they can step it up offensively, and as I said, if they maintain the current trajectory they're on, like as just like a borderline average offensive team or go even below it in certain categories, it's going to be a long year for you guys. But I will say this, it is early in the season. They're going to be fine. They're going to start heaving up 3-pointers at a far more efficient rate. I think if Kyrie ever returns, you'll be even more fine. Once Joe Harris starts hitting his shots and getting better opportunities, you'll be even better. I mean, Kevin Durant only shot, I think, he only made 1 3-pointer in the last game. I think that eventually they're going to start to focus on that, but their defense has been playing really, really well, limiting some of these teams to pretty low scores. And it's kind of the opposite problem the Knicks have right now. The Knicks are heaving up 3-pointers like crazy. Their defense is falling apart. You know what I mean? And that's not what we expected from the Knicks. Just natural regression of the defense. Evan Fournier is not as good of a defender as Reggie Bullock, and Elfrid Payton, while absolutely useless as an offensive player, was a much better defender than Kemba Walker. So you're seeing the differences here. But I will say that, I think you guys will be fine. Not much of a bold take. I'm just saying if you remain at those levels of offensive production, you will have a worse season than people think, but you're going to be fine. You have freaking Kevin Durant and James Harden, for goodness sakes. You're going to be fine.
The final thing I'll say, and I totally understand what you're saying, the Nets have had 3 or 4 guys that are supposed to be high volume, high efficiency scorers, not playing up to their standard. Joe Harris, Blake Griffin, Patty Mills, who's been streaky. Javon Carter's another one coming off the bench, but Blake Griffin and Joe Harris are starters. Okay. They're shooting abysmally from the field right now. Is abysmally a word? I'm not sure. They're not having great shooting stats to start the year. So they're bringing the overall team down. Harden has picked it up recently from 3. Durant isn't shooting a ton of 3. So I understand why those statistics are the way they are, but I think you're right. I think once Joe Harris picks it up a little bit, Blake Griffin starts hitting some shots, Patty Mills gets a little bit more consistent, I think you're going to see those numbers start to increase. But enough about my Nets. I want to get to your Knicks because look, you guys are 5-2 right now. You're one of the better teams in the East. You've been one of the biggest surprises in the NBA. Which game do you want to touch on first? We're going to talk about the win, or we're going to talk about the loss?
We could just talk about the overall success because there's a pretty consistent trend. And not overall success. I mean, not to be a cocky Knicks fan right now because we deserve it, but the overall trend of we're actually playing good basketball and not, losing consistent games and whatnot. There's an interesting trend going on right now. The Knicks play up to their competition and they play down to their competition. They've lost 2 games they should have won. They've led by double-digit points in both those games and they blew both games. The Raptors won. They simply just got out-hustled. RJ Barrett said it after the game best. They just wanted it more than us. They were more physical. They out-hustled us. They doubled their offensive rebounds. I think they finished with 13, and the Knicks had 7. So offensive rebounds were a big difference maker and factor in the Raptors winning this one. RJ Barrett, the last 3 games, has been playing at an all-star caliber level, averaging, I think, 24, 25 points per game, something in that realm. He's shooting 50% from 3-point range. The guy's playing really solid defense. He's been incredible. They're starting to just run the offense through him because he's making all the shots. And that's why you'll see Julius Randle's stats have taken a huge nosedive because of it. They're just they're playing the hot hand, and which makes total sense. But their defense elsewhere has been very spotty. Lack of communication, lack of hustle, lack of just being in the right place at the right time. And I think it's just a simple reality of they think they know they're better than these bad teams. They're not even bad teams. Raptors are not a bad team. They're just top heavy. They know that they're better than them, but they go into it too cocky. They go into it thinking we're just going to beat them because we're better instead of actually playing. Because on any given night, any team can win a basketball game. We in any sport really. Any team can emerge victorious, and the Knicks have just been kind of losing to their own decree. They've been losing because they think they know they're better and just playing down to their opponent because of it. And I think they need to be consistent. They need to be playing hard. They lost Taj Gibson in the last game. Ultimately, though, they have the talent to be probably a top team in this league. I think that what they've showed so early in the season, they're still gelling. They're still working with one another. If they can stay healthy, they're going to be incredibly difficult to beat for anybody. And Spen, when you're looking at this Knicks team, are they playing better than you thought they would to start?
No, I knew what you guys were last year, and I understood the additions that you guys made this year, and I thought that, look, it's early. You guys are 5-2. You're atop the East. We'll see where you guys are in a month or two. Same with the Nets. The Nets are 4-3. We'll see where they are in a month or two. But I am extremely impressed with how Evan Fournier has meshed with the offense. It's exciting to see RJ Barrett's growth. I'm a Duke fan, so I've always been an RJ Barrett guy. I thought he was going to be great for you guys from the jump. The fact that he's just been going off these last few games. He had 35 against the Pelicans and then 27 against the Raptors. Like you said, he's shooting ridiculously from the field. I'm not surprised by how successful you guys have been early on. The question is, you're right. When you have these games against the Raptors team that you guys are better than on paper, and I don't want to take anything away from the Raptors because I think they're a pretty solid team. I think they could probably get a 7 or 8 seed this year. I mean, Scotty Barnes didn't even play in this game, and he's been incredible for them. Anobi had 36 in this one against you guys. Gary Trent Jr. with 26. I mean, that's the aberration. Gary Trent Jr. is not scoring more than 20 a game. But, I think that you guys can really match up well with anyone in the East, and that makes you scary. And I have been impressed with what you guys have done, but I don't think I've been surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I felt pretty confident going into the season. Like, I felt like we were going to be a strong team. We added pieces to increase our offensive efficiency. It's just the defense, which Tom Thibodeau, that's his identity. His identity is playing strong defense.
Right.
And the Knicks simply just haven't done that. In a few occasions, there's been a couple games where they look great, and then they just take a day off. They just take a night off, and it's just like, they need the depth to step up a little bit more on the defensive side. And the transition points against them has been abysmal. Like, I think they entered the game 22nd in transition points against them, which is really bad. They were allowing a ton of points, and then against the Raptors, they allowed 22 transition points, and the Knicks only had 3. And that's where Obi Toppin's supposed to make a difference. Obi Toppin's supposed to be that transition monster in the dunking and the speed and the physicality. Like, that's where they saw him helping in that specific category analytically, and he just hasn't been able to do it because they're not quick enough off the rebound, and their offensive rebounds have lacked at times. And I think that's a major part because they're missing Nerlens Noel a ton. And I think he played a really important part in those offensive rebounds last year and giving them second opportunities. Mitchell Robinson's great, but he gets gassed, man. He's like, he hasn't had much time to really get his stamina underneath of him. He's still working his way back in. He's been great in many aspects, but they're missing Noel. They miss his ability to go up and get those rebounds and give more opportunities to the playmakers, especially in transition too. So, that's how I feel. I think that they're getting there. They're starting to put it together. It's a long season. The Knicks and Nets are nowhere where I don't think they're anywhere close to as good as they're actually going to be in a couple months from now, barring injuries, of course. But as they get better, as some of their players like the Joe Harrises of the world, and even Derrick Rose has been struggling the last couple of games, the Obi Toppins, as they start to get some steam under them, I think we're going to see both these teams become very, very dominant teams. It's just a matter of how dominant can they be? Which one's going to be better? Which one's going to be stronger? It's going to come down to defense because they can both score at ridiculous clips.
What for you, Alex? What was the biggest difference between the Pelicans win and the Raptors loss?
To hustle. In the Pelicans win, they tried to blow it. Like the Knicks tried to blow that game. They were trying to be resilient. They ended up being resilient at the end and just squeaking one out. But I think it was just hustle, man. Like they just kind of let Toronto run all over them. They seemed overconfident, and I think that really bit them in the butt. They need to remain humble and understand that like they're great, but they have to think that they're bad. You know what I mean? They have to think that they're fighting for something. They can't think that it's just going to be given to them. And I think they have such a strong mentality that it kind of got a little bit egotistical. They have to maintain that sense of like, we need to keep fighting for this because we haven't earned anything. We made it to the postseason once and we lost in the first round. They haven't done anything yet. So they have to keep that hunger. And I think that's really what will drive them the rest of the year.
The one thing I'll say about both squads, I don't think that the rosters are going to be the same after the trade deadline. The Knicks have a lot of pieces.
And Miles Turner, baby.
You guys
watch that name.
Absolutely acquire someone. I'm looking at your roster. You have guys like Alec Burks, Kemba Walker, Derrick Rose, Emmanuel Quickley, Obi Toppin. I mean, you want to keep your young guys, but I'm just saying Kevin Knox, the second, Wayne Selden, Miles McBride. You have a lot of pieces, and then you have your 3 big guys in Gibson, Noel, and Mitchell Robinson. You have a lot of pieces that you can eventually move if you want to upgrade. The Nets, on the other hand, they probably want to make a move sooner rather than later, especially with, the uncertainty surrounding Kyrie Irving, the uncertainty surrounding Nick Claxton when he's coming back, his effectiveness. But I don't think that the Nets have as many, shiny trade options as the Knicks do. So right now, you guys have the deeper team. I think the Nets are the more top-heavy, talented team. But if I'm comparing, the depth of each roster, I'm going to give it to the Knicks. You guys have a deeper team than us, and I'm more scared of the guys coming off the bench for the Knicks than I am for the Nets.
That's a fair evaluation. I'd say that we don't have that star power that you guys have, but our depth is really where we're going to win games. And I've been saying this pretty frequently, is the best way to beat top heavy teams is get into their bench quickly, out hustle them, outrun them, blow their stamina early, get into those bench players, and then let your benches just fight it out. And I think that's really, I mean, it's easier said than done because some of these guys are playing ridiculous amount of minutes. But if you can get into those bench pieces at key positions, get Harden out early. If you're the Knicks, if you're just in a situation where they'd be playing each other, try and get those guys out, and then lock them down with your best defenders. And I think that the Knicks are going to be a good team. I think the Nets are going to be a good team. I'm super excited to see them face off against each other this year. It's going to be freaking awesome.
November 30th, baby. Circle that date. November 30th, February 16th, and March 13th. Those are the 3 games. The first one's at Barclays. The second one's at Madison Square Garden. The third one is at Barclays. And Alex, March 13th is one day before my birthday. So I'm definitely going to that game. I have to find tickets somehow, whether I have to pay a gajillion dollars or get them free from somewhere. I don't care. I'll figure it out. Yeah, I think those are 2 pretty good evaluations of where our current teams are right now.
Absolutely. Well, guys, make sure to subscribe below on YouTube, of course, Apple and Spotify. And I hope you enjoyed this episode, breaking down both teams' strengths and weaknesses, the projections of this team. It's going to be a fun season. We say it every single podcast. Every week we have something new to talk about, whether it's a couple of strange, I guess, situations going on with losses and wins and why and the reason and cause behind some of them. But I think it's interesting. Both these teams have so much potential and talent. It's going to be so much fun to continue to break these teams down the entire year. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure to subscribe as always, and we'll catch you guys on the next Battle of the Boroughs.
Thanks for listening, guys.